Hey everybody, it's Halley O'Brien from the Snow Report Show, and welcome to our first ever OpenSnow Fireside Chat. I'm super excited for the opportunity to geek out with OpenSnow's finest, and today we're kicking things off with the man responsible for our weekly weather updates. That's right, I usually swoosh right into his forecasts every show, and this time I have to be careful because I might actually poke him in the eye. He's OpenSnow's Director of Operations, one of their many talented meteorologists, and of course a dedicated skier, Mr. Sam Collentine from OpenSnow. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Halley. It's a blast to be here, and yeah, it's finally nice to kind of be on video for everyone. I'm sure they read our forecasts and all of that, but I'm sure it's nice to actually see that I'm a real human and not some AI bot in the background.
Right, he does exist.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for taking the time to be here with us. And before we jump into all of the weather questions that we have, let us know a little bit about yourself. What's going on? Who is the man behind the maps?
Sure, yeah. So I grew up in Colorado. I grew up skiing at Eldora, and then my grandfather actually owned a condo in Vail. So I was lucky enough to kind of learn my skiing and snowboarding skills there. Then I went to CU Boulder and studied atmospheric science there. And then during my senior year of school is when I met Joel Gratz, right when him and Andrew Murray were getting started with OpenSnow. And I kind of hounded him for an internship. It ended up working out for the final semester of my senior year. And then I kept bugging him for the months after when I was interning at the National Weather Service office in Boulder. And eventually there was enough for me to do to join the team and start writing forecasts, helping with the business. And yeah, that was back in 2013. And since then, living in Boulder, been skiing a lot, mostly along I-70, take trips up to the Tetons a lot. But most recently, I moved to the Roaring Fork Valley with my fiance. And so I'm lucky enough to kind of change sides and living now in near Aspen. So I'll be enjoying those mountains soon enough. So as soon as it starts snowing, it's very warm here now, but the resort's open next week, and hopefully we'll get some more storms in the forecast.
I'm sure. I bet you can't even go out without getting the question of like, dude, where's the snow? What's going on?
Yeah. Yeah, it's texts from friends, people that meet me, ask me what I do for a living. And then they always want to know, obviously what the forecast is for the winter. And we'll get into more of those details. So yeah, it's always fun.
I would just start lying. I would just start saying, I'm a painter or something.
Yeah.
Just start asking them the weather.
It's like George Costanza in Seinfeld. He just tells everyone he's an architect.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
So looking across the country, and I guess maybe even North America at that scope, I mean, this time of year is really exciting. It's kind of all ahead of us. We're usually salivating over the long-term forecasts, wondering what kind of winter we're going to have, where it's going to snow, when it's going to snow. But I know you guys at OpenSnow have a bit of an aversion to long-range forecasts. Why?
It just ends up when you look back at years past, when whatever outlet puts out a seasonal forecast, it just usually is not correct. Sometimes they can get the general trends of where a good storm track can line up for a few months, but in general, I just kind of laugh at when outlets put out specific snow numbers for resorts for the entire season. Because just a few storm cycles can make or break a season at any one area. And so, we're focused at OpenSnow on just kind of the next 10 days, sometimes a little bit farther out than that. But when skiers and snowboarders are really trying to dial in their powder days, I think the next 10 days and eventually the next 5 days is what's most important.
Right. So that's going to come in handy a lot with the reservation systems and everything that
That's right.
so many skiers are going to have to navigate this year. So 10 days, that's the window of a trusting window. That's kind of where you can lean into the forecasts there.
Yeah, it's just when we kind of just look at modern day weather forecasts and the modeling that goes behind it, it's just we're really limited by the computer power that the models are able to use, and then the combination of the physics that people that are a lot smarter than me build upon those weather models. And so when we look back at behind forecast, just what happened previously. And then what that forecast is over the next 10 days, it just really falls off at around day 8, 9, 10. There are some models when we start looking at 11 to 30 day outlooks that can kind of get the general area of where storminess and temperatures, that is getting better. And as I think as we get more computer power and the physics and kind of just general understanding improves over the next few decades, I do think that we'll be able to, offer powder forecasts for 10 to 20 days. But I just never see in our lifetimes being able to say this day is going to be a powder day a month out. I just kind of I really see that as being a struggle in over the next few decades,
right? Unless you're like Nostradamus or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Not going to happen.
It's just tough.
All right, so looking ahead at this winter, I've heard that it's a La Niña year. What does that mean, and are we going to see that impact the snowfall in North America? Like, how will that impact the snowfall?
Sure, yeah, and this is one of those things that we are able to look at from a long-range forecast, kind of a seasonal outlook, and have a better idea. And so El Nino or La Nina all goes back to this term called ENSO, or El Nino Southern Oscillation. And all this is essentially doing is looking at what the ocean temperatures are in the East Central and Central Pacific Ocean. So there's kind of an area of, are those warmer than average? Are the sea temperatures colder than average? And this can actually lead to storminess and general trends across much of the world. And for the United States in general, and Canada, we can look back at previous years and see what El Nino or La Nina did during that year. And it especially helps if that La Nina or El Nino is stronger than average or stronger than it has been. And so for La Nina, when we're looking at that is the cool phase. And so El Nino is the warm phase when the ocean temperatures are warmer than average. La Nina is when the ocean temperatures are cooler than average. And so for the upcoming year, we are entering a La Nina year. And so the temperatures have cooled in the East, Central, and Central Pacific. We usually see storm tracks that are favoring the Pacific Northwest, Western Canada, Northern Rockies, and down into kind of Utah and Colorado. The one thing that big areas in Utah and Colorado that people are really stoked about, the El Nino and La Nina typically don't have a big impact on the snowfall here, but El Nino and La Nina, especially La Nina this upcoming year, it really has a big impact on precipitation and snowfall in the Pacific Northwest. And that's kind of already happening. I mean, they're already seeing storm after storm. It's already mid-November, and they're already having a deep snowpack, and they're well above average in that area of that part of the country. And so I kind of see that continue to happen. Cooler than average temperatures in the Pacific Northwest. Storms keep coming through that area, and then the one hope that we have is just that continues to drop further south, and that areas throughout California, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico can typically do well if that storm track can dip far enough south.
Right, and does that dip far enough east too? Like, will it hit the Midwest? Will it hit the Northeast as well?
Sure. Yeah. Yes, it can. It just really once in the fall when the jet stream is transitioning from its kind of summer phase to its winter phase, it kind of gets really wonky. And so it's always interesting to see how far south, again, where that jet stream sets up and where the storm track will be. And then if it can get far enough south and we can get enough storms to push east, I do think that will have an impact on the upper Midwest and the Northeast as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, well, fingers crossed. Do your La Nina dances. I'm picturing
exactly.
like the lady in the red dress, the emoji.
Yes,
I think
exactly.
she's actually La Nina. So now I kind of want to get into a little bit of where you guys stand as far as climate change. What are your thoughts on climate change as a whole, and how it pertains or relates to winter and ski season?
Sure. Yeah, this is obviously a very complicated but important topic, and it's coming up more and more. And so, from a skiing and winter perspective, in our expertise, the biggest things we're looking at from a climate change perspective and how the climate is is changing winter sports is that we are seeing temperatures warm over the past few decades, and the science is pretty clear that warming will continue to happen. The one thing that we aren't seeing is a change in precipitation. So there's no long-term trend that we're seeing for precipitation. But as temperatures warm, that will start to impact where the rain line ends and where the snow line starts.
Sure.
And so Dr. Jim Steenberg at the University of Utah is a great resource, and I've learned a lot from him about this. He had a great presentation a few years ago. Maybe we could link to in the show notes. Essentially, areas above 10,000 feet aren't seeing any long-term trend, but areas below 10,000 feet will probably start to see more rain events over time during the heart of the winter. And so, but yeah, I mean, I'm not a climatologist. None of us are at OpenSnow. We're just forecasting for the next few weeks to help you find your next powder day. But temperatures are rising. We aren't seeing a trend in precipitation. But this will start to impact probably where we see more rain events for the mountain communities over the next few decades.
Right, and that's just the opposite of what we want to see in the mountain communities in the wintertime. So hopefully we could do our part to help slow this climate change and the warming trends.
Yeah, it's I just think it's really important for everyone to be informed about the topic.
Sure.
We're trying to do at OpenSnow is now 1% of all access purchases, or all access is our subscription offering, goes towards carbon sequestration. And so we're an early investor in that through our payment processor called Stripe. And so I think that pulling carbon out of the atmosphere is going to be one of the biggest things that we're going to have to solve over the next few decades to kind of get this issue under control. And so, we're just doing our small part as a company to kind of give back and to help solve the issue.
So that's really interesting. And while the precipitation isn't necessarily being impacted, the temperatures are, and that really is kind of a make or break situation for snowmaking. Obviously, when it doesn't snow naturally, resorts have to take matters into their own hands. And while the technology of snowmaking is always improving, at the end of the day, it's still about the weather and the temperature, and more specifically, the wet bulb. That's the magic word everybody tosses around. And
right.
We actually had a question on Instagram from @Reverend_Ghetto Blaster. And they ask, what does wet bulb have to do with anything? Go.
Sure. So to put it simply, the wet bulb is just the combination of the actual air temperature and the amount of moisture that is in the air. And so ideally for snowmaking, we want this wet bulb temperature to be below freezing. And so if we take the amount of moisture that's in the air, take the actual air temperature, a calculation of this, we want this typically to be in the mid-20s is ideal. If it's low 20s, it's amazing. But this can typically, as long as the wet bulb is below freezing or somewhere around 27 to 30 degrees, that's kind of that ideal mix of the actual temperature and the amount of moisture that are in the air.
This is one of the favorite comments I always see in, on resort pages. It's like, it's 32 degrees. Why aren't you making snow? But meanwhile, the humidity is around 85%. So that temperature number might as well be 35, 38, whatever,
Right.
And you can't make snow if it's not cold enough. So that,
right.
Mr. Reverend Ghetto Blaster, is what wet bulb has to do with.
I love his name too.
Me too. Couldn't help but have a little chuckle. I like the underscore in there.
Exactly.
Do you have any sort of tips or tricks as to find the best snow early in the season? Like, what resorts could you bet on for the best early season? Yeah,
that's a great question. One of the things you look at is obviously the amount of snowfall that's happening early season, but you can look back at what percentage of any resort has more than half their mountain open by, say, Christmas. And so resorts that we look at for this that typically do well from a historical standpoint are Alta Snowbird. It just snows there so much. They're just the perfect snow machine that they typically get more than half their terrain open by Christmas. Steamboat's another great resort. Beaver Creek is typically another great resort. Mountain Bachelor in Oregon is typically a great resort.
Wolf Creek's
It's
almost, I think they're what, 98, 99% open now?
Yeah, and Wolf Creek is great. Another combination that's great for this is how steep or rocky their terrain is, and Wolf Creek is not very rocky, and so they can get a lot of their terrain open really quickly with just after a couple feet of snow they can open up a lot of the mountain. And so same for Steamboat, same for Beaver Creek. And so, yeah, we're just looking at those areas in kind of the Intermountain West or high elevations. Whistler does really well too, even though they're at a lower elevation. Their higher latitude helps them, and they just typically get a lot of snow early season. So, yeah, we're just kind of looking at that combination of cold temperatures, consistent snow, and from a historical standpoint, those resorts I listed just typically do really well to get a lot of their mountain open before, say, Christmas.
That's awesome. Yeah, and then for those of you guys on the East Coast or in the Midwest, whenever those snow guns can get cranking. Although the last few years have been pretty kind to New England. I mean, I would say last year's early season snow was, it was significant and it was fun. I had a blast around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and there's always, Killington's usually always one of the first resorts to open. They have amazing snowmaking there. And so, yeah, can't forget about the New England resorts for sure.
Definitely. Well, there you have it. Some early season powder lap tips. You heard it from Mr. Collentine himself. All right, Sam, I have a few rapid fire questions if you're ready.
Sure. Okay. Go for it.
What is the best weather-related pickup line you've ever heard or have said? I have one written. Wait. Do you want it?
Okay, what do you have?
Girl, you're like a snowflake. I've never met anyone else like you.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Some of them are really dirty. I actually looked them up before I called you, and I was like, oh, my goodness. This is very, very risque. Okay, next question. Do you ever ask other people what the weather is supposed to be?
I do. Typically, when someone starts talking about the weather and they don't know what I do as a profession, I kind of like to get their take, or the forecast is going to be for the upcoming few weeks. And so, I kind of like to have some fun and see where they're getting their resources from and what their forecast is.
Third and last question. What is your go-to après ski drink or snack?
Oh, that's a great question. After a long day of skiing, I love a good plate of nachos.
Yes.
Guacamole, some sour cream, a lot of cheese, some pico. So good.
Preach.
After a long day. Drink. I'm probably boring. I like a good old IPA.
There you go.
Yeah.
You have to come by the studio.
My drink of choice. So
we have plenty of those.
Yes,
the beer fridge is full.
I know. I'm always so jealous that you are, before every video that I see that you share with us, that you're popping open beer to start it off. I'm just so happy when I see that.
It's so good. And we get great recommendations from all the snow reporters. I mean, I keep expanding my palette and my horizons in the beer world. So thank you guys very much. Keep the recommendations coming.
Right.
And so hopefully we can share a plate of nachos and toast an IPA together real soon after a bitchin' powder day. Here's hoping.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, Sam, thank you so much for this. This was great. This was our first official OpenSnow Fireside Chat. Lots of great information and really appreciate the time. And if you guys have any other questions, we have 3 more Fireside Chats coming up throughout the season. So, don't be shy. Post it in the comments. Be like Mr. Reverend _Ghetto Blaster. Ask away. Sam, thanks so much for everything, and I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
You as well. Hope it's filled with plenty of turkey and thick mashed potatoes.
Yes. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hope you guys have a wonderful Thanksgiving, too, with delicious turkey, thick mashed potatoes, and some cold beer. All right. We'll see you soon. Bye.